Good people, welcome to another episode of the Best Three podcast. I'm Alvin, joined again by Tori Hawkins. Tori, how we doing on this fine evening?
Alvin, I'm doing well. Had a chance to catch up watching some Indian Wells. Unfortunately, a few highlights, but caught a good bit of the final of both. I'll be honest, Alvin, we haven't really talked much about pro tennis since Australia, right? But
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Indian Wells is always just a slippery slope, man. Every time you
Yeah.
think that you got a little bit of momentum and the previous slam has kind of shown you who the front runners are, man. I can remember back in the days working with some top players, even like one of the best I've worked with, Brian Haley, had some of his best wins at Indian Wells. Beat Juan Carlos Ferrero back in the day at
Yeah.
Indian Wells. And so one of the things I look back to, I think Ginepri had a real good tournament that year as well. If he didn't win it, I think he got to the final. And I think Brian got to the semi, if I'm not mistaken. This is years ago.
Yeah.
Brian was top 50 ATP, solid, but, perhaps not looked at to get to the sit.
Right.
Wells,
Yeah.
right? And so I say that with full respect to Brian, a phenomenal player, an NCAA finalist, and great player, a top national player himself. Current USGA president, by the way. What's up, Brian? Shout out to BVD. The point I'm getting at is this tournament has perennially always been tricky for seeds going in.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your thoughts on it, but my thoughts on historically, it's always been tough.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a couple.
And it's upset city.
Yeah, we're looking at a couple different things, right? So just kind of to put, get our feet grounded, where we are, right? It's mid-March. We are about, 6 weeks post Australian Open, right? So, at this point in the year, the players are coming, most of them are coming over from the Middle East, a couple of big tournaments there, Dubai and maybe even Abu Dhabi. I can't remember the specific cities. But then, some of the guys went down to Acapulco and then, came up for, some of them played the Golden Swing. The women are coming directly from Dubai and Doha. So, it's a weird space that we're in that like we're finishing up this like initial kind of hard court season, right? So we've got Indian Wells now, quick follow by Miami. Yep. and then everybody kind of goes to the dirt for the rest of the for the next better part of 3 months.
South America, be it Northern Europe, be it Spain and more Southern Europe. Yeah, you're right.
It's dirt season from essentially from April 1st on out. So kind of with that being the case, back to your point about Indian Wells, you and I have both been there for various reasons. You've been there for the event. I was there for a site visit once a couple years back for an event we were going to do back in my Flow Sports days. And you drive out there, and it's for the listeners and the viewers. What's up if you're on YouTube? Good to see you. If you're driving in your car, be safe. It's the middle of the Coachella Valley. Like there's not really a lot going on out there, and then you get to this huge venue that looks amazing on television, but it is literally cut out of nowhere. Like you can see from one side of the venue to the other. You can speak more towards the layout of the facility, but like. You feel like you are in a desert, and that does impact the tennis.
100%. Windy is all get out from time to time. You get those rando winds or gusts. The wind may only be 5-8 miles an hour, but that occasional gust comes in at about 20. It's cooler in the morning, burning hot during the day, cooler at night. Like a typical desert can be.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, Alvin, and maybe it's changed in later years since I've been there, the fencing was short. The wind blew straight through. It wasn't like it was anything that was normal. It just seemed like it was, again, it's built for the tournament, right?
Yeah.
And I remember they moved the Easter Bowl from a lot of things there at Palm Springs, the resort there at Palm Springs, moved a lot of the events over to Indian Wells at that center. But I got to tell you, man, that old place it's wide open, ton of space, big courts, right? Very big courts, but man, wide open. So if you're not used to playing the wind, if you're a big hitter wanting a little more of a hitting the right ball, this is not your place. And so that's why I saw walking into this, the players that are a little bit more compact of swing, players that are a little more drivers that can kind of feed off the pace a little bit, they can still add a little variation. If you're a little more of a one-way player, you could have your hands full at Indian Wells because a little bit of loft a little bit of law throws off your ability to penetrate the court.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that to me is what I saw in both finals, to be honest with you. I saw a lot of, and again, and who knows when the last time the court's been resurfaced. So that now you're adding a little bit of slowness to the play too. I mean, that adds the counter punisher is one of my terms I like to use. The counter punisher feeds off of a little bit of a slower court when they can defend that big weapon and then get a chance themselves when they kind of stun the bigger hitter with their return. And then that big hitter's kind of, left flat-footed. And now the tables turn quite quickly.
So that's a good point, like on the court conditions, right? So, they just this year they changed the courts to that plexi pave surface, which is used in
Australia,
in Miami, Australia. I think maybe US Open uses it as well. But it's on paper it's supposed to be a bit faster, but I guess the players are saying the players' reports are kind of all over the place. Like, oh, it's faster. Some feel like it's slower. Some feel like it's exactly the same. And when you change the surface of the court, but you can't really change the altitude. You can't change the air. Like, it's still thin. It's one of those. It used to be one of those fast through the air, ball grabs the court and sits up, which is why Carlitos has done so well in the event in the last few years. I mean, to his credit, made the semifinals this year. It suits him. But before we go down that path, let's heads or tails. You want to start on the women's side, start on the men's side.
Let's go with the men. Let's go with the men. I feel like you just called up Carlos. Just a very, I noted in one of your notes, pre-podcast, Carlos has holes. I'd love to know what you thought about that. Tell me where you're going with that.
Yes. Okay. So I feel like I'm very aware of, we look at our great champions in the sport and usually we don't appreciate them in the moment. Like, I think with the big three we did, because the moment was so long, right? That in their second and third peaks, we were then able to appreciate the peak that happened prior. But I think we have to, be very cognizant of where we are with Carlos. Like, he is, he's won 4 Grand Slams already, excuse me. At the ripe old age of he's 21, something like that. So, but I think we are starting to see some patterns with him that I feel like cannot be ignored. And I've talked about this player profile that he tends to have trouble with, right? Taller guys who can make the court long against him, right? And my point about him having holes is what I'm starting to see, and I remember the first time I saw it when he played Medvedev at the US Open 2 years ago, lost to him. And then same thing against Zverev 2 years ago in the Australian Open. And then it came up again. We made one more tournament. But like, when he plays these big guys, right, who can reach, kind of the stuff that when he pulls players off the court, especially off the serve, they're there and they can get back in the court and make him play through them.
Sure.
I think that's where he struggles. His greatest gift is his ability to improvise and make things happen kind of like seemingly out of nowhere. But what these players are forcing him to do is be very disciplined. It's like, this is kind of what you have to do. You're going to have to take control of each point very early, move through the court and finish. And it's almost like a drill. Do it over and over and over and over. And, not to kind of go on, but Carlos has this insane record in 5th set matches, right? I think part of it is because his talent will, like, over the course of 5 sets is going to, it's going to do him just fine, and he's gonna
and his fitness,
yes. But then the flip side of that coin is like he can kind of lose focus to where he gets into those 5th sets when he probably shouldn't. And I think this is where it kind of bites him in a 2 out of 3 set match.
In a 2 out of 3 set match for sure.
Right. Comes out a little flat against Jack and then gets himself into a tussle. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you're making a great point, and I agree with you, and I love your term, the profile, that players that he struggles against. All of us do, right? Club player,
absolutely,
player,
absolutely.
Player. We all struggle with that profile. We just have more of it, right?
Right.
So let's we all understand that. I'm going to present to you, Alvin, a very different perspective.
Give it to me. I'm ready.
Carlos have peaked too early in this tournament.
Huh.
You're talking about a tournament like the Slams that are 2 weeks long, like the Slams that are pretty packed with talent. Let's be honest. I'm going to read off to you, Alvin, and this is just going to give you just where I'm coming from. You tell me how you think about it.
Okay.
Carlos Alcaraz beat Carlos 4-2, round 2. Okay, with me so far? Carlos Alcaraz in the 3rd round beat Denis Shapovalov, who just come off the win off Dallas and is playing some great tennis
playing
right
good,
now.
Playing good tennis. Yep.
2-4. Big hitting, big slappy lefty. Right? So you can't say he has problems with lefties, although he does run around more balls than most. Now, here's the one I want you to focus on, Alan. Carlos Alcaraz beats Dimitrov, who's playing some good tennis right now, 1-1. Alvin, you still going with this?
Well, I see where you're going with it. I have some pushbacks on it.
Now he played Cerundolo. I didn't catch that match. He had some good wins and beat some people all the way. 3-6. Here's where I noticed, how do you beat a Dimitrov 1-1? And then you have a 3-6 against Cerundolo. Now here's my point. Now, Alvin, that was the quarters.
Yep.
Don't forget, he did bagel your boy in the 2nd, which tells me that he is coming down off of his peak. Now, Alvin, as a lot of coaches, I have a theory on how we play into and play out of tournaments. I once saw Andy Roddick, and I thought he was, at the time, was one of the best players in the world. Andy Roddick won the U.S. Open in 2004.
He did. Yep.
So forget it, 2003. He plays, now check this, he plays in 2004. When I watched Andy play, when I tell you Andy was balling in the first week of 2004, it was ridiculous how good he was playing. Andy Roddick went out in a rando match, like round of 16, maybe quarters, to a guy named Gilles Muller. You remember Gilles?
Yeah.
He goes out to Gilles Muller. And when I tell you it was a weird kind of a match, Gilles just kind of hung in there. Andy lost it more than Gilles won. No offense to Gilles. Andy was playing ball. When I tell you Andy was cracking the ball, 140 to 150, 160 miles. I mean, just hammering foreheads. Backhand was clean. Come to that, he was playing the ball he should have played in the last week, in the first week. You don't necessarily have a lot of control over how well you play. And I know that may sound weird. I'm talking about the pros, though. They just, at that time, may have peaked a bit early. Now, here's where I'm going with this with Carlos. And I don't know.
Give it to me.
No. I think Carlos played his best ball 5 to 6 days ago. And by this point, he's coming down against a peaking Jack Draper. And now Jack is playing some good tennis right when he needed to. That's my point I submit to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you this. Let's take a step back. Okay. 2nd round against Dennis, right? I watched that match. That was more about Dennis and less about Carlos. Dennis was terrible. He was terrible. Okay.
Conditions, slow courts, outdoors.
Dennis is double faulting. He's double faulting left and right. Like he was throwing in 2 doubles a game. Like it was bad news bears. Okay. Okay, but I'll look past that. The match against Dimitrov, right? And Dimitrov has played Carlos well before. He's beaten him in a couple of big matches and some in a 1000 Miami last year and another indoor tournament. Doesn't matter. Dimitrov's prior match was a 7-6 in the 3rd drag out against Monfils, right? Those men, elder statesmen of the tour are playing the hits against each other. And then Dimitrov comes out with nothing left in the tank, right? Yep. So there's your 1-1, right?
Yep.
So, but the Cerundolo match that's when it started to get a little loose. Cerundolo was, Carlos wins that match, 9.5 times out of 10. It was just not as convincing as you would like. Carlos let him play. He played with him. When that's the kind of match you want to see Carlos like reassert himself in the tournament and say, okay, boom, foot down. I'm trying to win this thing again.
Sure. Put his foot on his neck.
Yes, exactly. But then you go back and by contrast look at Jack's kind of path and Jack Draper, yes, semifinals U.S. Open last year by hook or by crook he did it. Defaults where they be, but he did it, and now he believes that he's that guy, and he's carrying himself like that guy. He is just like steadily just making improvements, like expecting things out of himself, climbing the rankings, very workman. And so, I have some Jack Draper thoughts, but the match itself was just a little like Jack just kind of did the thing that like Medvedev did and like Zverev did, like big guy, moves well enough.
Yep. Reminds me a lot of Cam Norrie about 2 years ago when Cam made a push to top 20. Just surprised a lot of people with the backhand holding up, surprised people with the serve, had the ability to come little bit different game. Jack didn't come in quite as much as he used to, and Cam came in a little bit more, but really kept it pretty standard with the cross-court backhand, looking for the inside forehand. I mean, let's be honest. That's his game, but was probably better off the return than you thought, better off the backhand. I'm talking about Cam, but I'm saying Jack has a bigger backhand, in my opinion, and I know Cam took it on the rise. Jack's backhand, quiet as kept, Jack's backhand is his best shot.
So I have in my notes that Jack Draper is one of those not lefties. Like you watch him play and it's like he doesn't do lefty stuff. And I'm left-handed, right? You know, lefties we all like to do. So we like to, work things, work the spin. And you often see a lefty with a pretty solid backhand because we come up playing against righties and we bang cross courts, and that's a thing. And then after the match was over, guess what I saw Jack do? Taking off his wristbands, throw them in the crowd. Right. He throws them right-handed.
There you go.
He throws them right-handed.
I saw it.
He throws them right-handed. The things you learn. Off topic, Russell Westbrook, I saw him signing autographs the other day. He's left-handed.
Left-handed, yeah.
What are we doing?
Rafa's right-handed. You know what I mean? There's that. I've always, and this is a weird thing, and I get this even with club players, ladies in my alpha teams, and even juniors. There are righties, there are ambies, and there are lefties. And depending on, and I know what the stats say, 13% of the population, blah, 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 blah. I think it's actually less that are actual lefty. And I think there are 15 to 20% of the population that are ambi. For whatever reason. We don't need to go down the rabbit hole of ambies and the stats. But there are that select few that have that unbelievable talent of both sides that I think have found a way to trick the brain to understand the left and right side, that just have the ability to do both. That's why Rafa's serve was never that big, because he's right-handed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just can't train the right arm. You can't train the left arm to be what the dominant arm would have been, and vice versa. But 22 Grand Slams later, he did okay. I'm just saying, Jack right-handed. You mentioned the other players. There are so many guys like that I've seen. So many two-handed forehand. Both forehand, double forehand type guys.
Yeah.
These guys are just, in my opinion, are just special. Back to Jack, as most righties are, right? That he has a left-handed, he has a right-handed forehand with help on that backhand side.
Yeah. More Torgaloo. More Torgaloo is always preaching this left eye versus right eye dominant thing.
Yep, your dominant eye.
The dominant eye, yeah. And so, when it turns into a timing issue, like it's one of those, like Jack just maybe, outside of the fact that he does throw right-handed, just feels better, sees it better on that side. And
that left eye may be his best eye.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I hit the backhand a lot more compact than my forehand on my right side. And even when I messed around with baseball, like I'd always want to bat on the right side. When I play golf, I golf on the right side. I use scissors with the right hand. Like it's one of those.
My father is also left-handed.
Okay.
He is such a dominant lefty that he golfs right-handed and just putts left-handed, right?
Okay.
For the same reason. Let's see what you can appreciate.
Maybe I'd putt better.
All right. So I say it to say, I've seen this before. My brother is one of those ambies. He can do it either way, always could, can hit left or right, was actually stronger on the left side, had more control on the right side. Just one of those kind of things.
Right,
he played a lot of golf and scratch golfer back in the day. So my point is I've seen this in my own family. And getting back to Jack Draper, the biggest piece I see with Jack, and I went back and watched some previous matches with him and Holger. I was trying to figure out why on paper has Holger, why did he have that much trouble, right? I went back to, I think it was Western Southern. It was a Cincinnati, I think last year when Jack played Holger, and I'm not sure what round it was. It could have been the semi, but Holger had his way with him all day long. I mean, it was an absolute clinic. And it was funny to me how, in looking at the two matches, the court position was completely different for both matches. In this match, right, in this final, Jack's, ironically, and you would think, it's counterintuitive, you would think the guy holding baseline is the guy that's winning the match. It's the guy that was giving ground that was winning the match.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing with Jack.
It was so what I would call, counterintuitive. In the previous, when I tell you Jack is hugging the baseline, taking the balls early in the Cincinnati match, looking classic clean, and every once in a while, and hitting big by the way, but every once in a while that loopy forehand just got up there, and when Holger had a chance to reset, get the ball deep, Jack had problems. In this match, Holger was on top of the baseline. Alvin.
Right.
Holger could not have played a more tactical match, but at some point, Holger's power is not his strongest suit, and it almost got him to playing a style of play that, for me, is a little bit at the red line of his engine. He's not a power goes through you kind of player, but the more you play on top of the baseline and play on the rise tennis, you better have a step up forward and some volley skills that are just going to continue to go through the court.
And Jack will make you do it over and over and over.
And Jack will make you do it over and over.
Which is what he did to Carlos. It was almost the same. It was almost the same thing.
Almost the same type of thing.
Yeah.
So where Carlos has that go through you ball, right? I don't know if Holger has that same type of ball person. To your point, the profile. I don't know if he had, and we know he didn't have the huge serve, but 30 plus consistently. Now, I'm saying when Holger goes back and reviews the tape, his team, and they go back and review the tape, what did I do well against Jack when I beat him before? I reset more. I rolled a little more. I didn't drive as often because I think what he ended up giving, he actually ended up giving Jack pace to work with. I don't think Jack's a go-through type of player. He likes pace. So he's not a pace creator. Right?
Yeah.
So I feel Jack actually benefited from Holger's court position and time. That's
so
what
let's turn that back. Let's turn that back in maybe the other direction, right? Less of a okay. So there was a time where Jack was working with Wayne Ferreira, right? After Wayne and Francis split, Wayne goes to Jack's camp for a little bit and is very adamant about Jack playing bigger, right? So that I think that might have been not that same time, and it was a very short-lived relationship because Jack, by nature, like he's not that kind of guy. And I think he needs more time to even produce that stroke. 100%. He doesn't like to, he is a big dude who doesn't play big dude game.
100%.
Very much so, almost like Zverev, like a lefty Zverev, if you will.
Very, very similar.
He's more comfortable with more space back there.
Side.
Exactly.
If anything, he drives off the back end like Zverev does, rolls the forehand, needs time to set it up. As you said in the previous episode, his forehand technique does not allow him to hit a bigger ball.
Yeah, and I stole that from Andy Roddick too. Let's not get it twisted. He said
we'll give credit to Roddick.
Yeah. But so I think that's kind of the when we look back at the tournament, it's like the Carlos thing is the Carlos thing, but I feel like for him his remit is not so much winning Indian Wells. He'll be judged by the amount of Grand Slams that he puts up, and I think even with his sometimes up and downs within matches, he's still good enough over 5 sets that it generally works out in his favor until he runs into this almost like old school drill where we're like, okay, this is the drill. The drill is first serve, first strike, and it's not like strike and go. It's maybe strike, 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 and then go finish. And you have to do that over and over. And I saw him hit so many overheads. It's like an old school, just like half court approach shot pass drill. We're just going to do this. We're going to do this for 3 hours. Can you do it the entire time?
100%.
And that's a tough ask. It's a tough ask, especially with a guy who wants to, create that spin profile to get you, backing up and get you off the side of the court. It's just a different kind of.
Which is what I was kind of surprised that Holger didn't change it up enough to make that part happen. And that was my point. Holger, over the course of his short career, has always rolled balls and driven balls. He's, if anything, gotten deep in the court and ripped bigger and rolled more when he was stepping forward. And I feel like he's starting to drive the ball better. It's more what you think would be correct, but I also feel like it's getting a little bit out of he's losing a little bit, in my opinion. Again, the final of Indian Wells is no small feat. He seems to be getting a little bit away from what's working for him and the change of pace and the ability to drive and the ability to counter punish. You have to roll balls to counter punish. You can't be driving everything to counter punish.
Yeah, I think
you will end up becoming an aggressive baseliner by default.
Right.
And this is a very tricky area, Alvin, because if you don't have the ability to come forward comfortably and finish, and you're not taking first strike and coming in, it's a very difficult thing. Tommy Paul has had this happen to him a few times. he is playing so much on the rise that he ends up kind of almost by de facto aggressive baseline when he's actually very good countering you. And if he doesn't have the power, the absolute ball speed to go through you, while it's a good tactic, you need to be able to know when to dial it back a little bit and let the guy run you enough and take advantage of your speed. What made some of the great fast players so good back in the day is they allowed you to run them and they hurt you on the run. The counter punisher needs to run a little bit. When you're playing on the rise, you're not running, you're striking. Right. Striking is not a bad suit. The guy's top five or whatever Holger is in the world. He's a darn good player, phenomenal player. He just, in my opinion, got himself in this match where he was going forward so much that he almost had only 2 targets. And if Jack found the way to get around that ball and took that inside in, his angle of attack could not handle the inside in.
Right, yeah.
He couldn't.
Yeah, he's too tight. He's too tight to the court.
Tight. Your angle of approach is, think of a V. You got the center point, you got a compass. You got an old school pencil and pinpoint. You want
to be cutting it. You want to be cutting it off. You don't want to be like with a little bit of a forward pressure. Yeah.
That's right. You're not built to do a 90-degree angle going to the left. So I just say it to say, I think Holger's played him better before in times past. I would also say, and as we are in this evolving pro tour, that what the rock paper scissors is evolving constantly. I mean, you have players that are on the rise is a style in itself, but against certain players, it may or may not be as effective that day. Put slow courts, a little bit of wind, Indian Wells, woo, buddy. That actually may work against you because you're not going to go through the court on these guys.
Right, you're not going to be able to actually take offense with it as much as you're accustomed to.
And let's say you did do it, and you had an Andy Roddick level serve that's giving you 2 service winners / aces a service game. Well, then you can do it because you got insurance and a couple of big ones to save you the energy in the long term. I don't know. When I look at that score, was 2-2. Come on.
I mean, it's
2-2. Come on.
It's like it's almost not about either one of them because I think the big takeaway is not Jack Draper won his first Masters 1000, right? And it's not really about Holger Rune not showing up in that final. I think it's more about we by the second round of this tournament, there's due to not injury, there's no Yannick Sinner. Due to whatever's going on, probably just Father Time, there's no Novak Djokovic. Due to Alexander Zverev, number 1 seed, out. Right. So I think this is more of a peek into the future of the men's side of the men's tour. It's just like you're gonna get some finals and big tournaments that look like this. Like Alcaraz isn't like he's not the machine that like let's say your Sampras and your Federers were, right? Where he can just like come. He's not old enough yet to be that laser focused.
And I don't know if he'll ever be. You know what, Alvin? And I'm gonna stop right there. Hold up. We keep talking about the GOATs.
Yeah.
And you cannot give these youngsters the GOAT credit yet. They're just not there. And that's nothing against them. I'm looking at a player. I got 3 players in my brain right now. Francis Tiafoe, Taylor Fritz, and Ben Shelton. Okay, those are 3 I'm always watching when going tournaments like this, right? These are some great players, man. These guys are doing some great things. They're not yet in that kind of conversation. They don't have the Grand Slam pedigree just yet. The problem is, it's not them. It's us as fans who are expecting them to be Andre,
sure,
Pete, Jim, right? And others who were that good who came before them. They were just the best of the era and turned out to be the best of their era for all time. Now, we go a further step to the actual GOATs, and we talk about Roger, Rafa, and Novak. It's very difficult to go through. It's like if you were comparing the next music group to the Beatles, or Led Zeppelin, or some of these, Michael Jackson. You just cannot. They're phenomenal in their own right, but you just can't compare.
I think I'm there with you. I'm there with you, though. I think we're saying the same thing. I think I agree with you. I feel like we're resetting to the norm here. Like I feel like this is going to be normal.
Yes. Now, I also want to throw a slight dig into the Sheltons, Fritzes, and Tiafos, because these are tournaments for me for them to make their headway against the top 5, to
Sure.
get inside that top 5. And I felt like, I think didn't Fritz lose to Jack? So
He did.
that's a tournament where I'm like, that's a match where I'm like, you know what? That was your match. You didn't have such a good Australian that that this is a match for you to, not that he ever wants to lose. We understand that. Taylor's a great player. I'm just saying, you let another player kind of get a little bit ahead of you. You look at the year, right? The pros, if I'm not mistaken, I think it still goes off about a 16-week year that establishes their rankings and their points. So you don't do well this year, Alvin, no big deal. You got next week, Miami, for an example. And it's very easy to have a good week next week because you had a bad week before. Multiple reasons, different conditions, didn't play as much, you're still fresh. And make no mistake, it's almost guaranteed that Draper will not have a good Miami because he had such a good Indian Wells. Conditions different, he's tired, he's dinged up, he played 7 matches, right? You get the idea. My point is to say, in that 16-week year, so to speak, you just have to have 16 good results out of the 30, give or take, 32, 35 weeks of tournament tennis you play. So it's not the end of the world, right? And that's how tennis players have to think. You have to have a very short memory, go out there and gunsling and do your thing. Have 7 weeks bad in a row, start to panic a little bit.
Right.
You have 10 weeks in a row, change coach, change rackets, take spots, do something, right? Because this is something right. Have one bad week, bro.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's a bad. I mean, we're still feeling it out. Like I know it's a rolling 52-week ranking system, so it kind of always is happening.
Always
but it's
rolls.
the beginning of the year. There is a mental reset in December.
It rolls, but you're still going off a handful of results. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying in that 52 weeks, what you worry about is when that last big tournament falls off, right? when it rolls off 52 weeks later. That's really what you're concerned with.
So before we go over to the women's side, I do want to, you mentioned Ben Shelton. I like to do we are Ben Shelton fans here on the Best of 3 podcast. We like Ben Shelton for a lot of reasons, some personal connections,
100%.
but also like we just, we like what he's doing. We like what he stands for. We like what he brings to the tour. Let's just do a quick Ben Shelton check-in. I feel like Ben is making incremental improvements in his game. The biggest change I've seen in the last 12 months is his ability he has tightened up his errors from the baseline, specifically on the backhand side. The backhand's pretty much, it's solid now. Like he's not hitting a lot of winners there, but he's not making errors either. I feel like that's his shield, right? As to borrow one from Craig O'Shaughnessy, like that's the shield, right? And it's doing what it's supposed to do. The forehand, he's getting there. He's getting there. I'm not really sure what to make of it quite yet. Like, because I personally don't understand what the best version of Ben Shelton is. So I'm gonna pose this to you.
He does yet either. I think he's got such a live arm that he has about 3 different finishes, and between the buggy and the rip, I think he's very instinctive, which I like about him. I still don't think he's dialed into the one he wants the most. I think he's got a phenomenal first strike. And like a lot of big weapons, he is very vulnerable off of the forehand side. His backhand to me is a steady side. You mentioned shield. I don't feel like his forehand is bulletproof from the standpoint that he takes too many risks in general. I would also tell you, here's a small subtle thing. When I saw this last year at the Atlanta Open, when they played a young player, and I might be incorrect on the name, Nishioka, who was also lefty. I think Ben struggles against other lefties. He lost to Jack in this tournament.
Yeah.
I would submit to you because
I can see it.
He just can't go back in the backhand. Jack's backhand is better than Ben's.
Yes.
Let's say that.
Yes.
And so now, what does that do to the bigger hitting Ben Shelton? He falls into a bit of the trap to overhit, to go for more, instead of out steady. I think Jack has very underrated returns. He's got very good returns. He doesn't miss many of them. His backhand, to me, is people sleep on. That's his best shot.
His best shot. Yeah.
And now if I'm a lefty matching up on the lefty side, on the dude's side,
where are you going to go?
Where are you going to go?
Right.
You're not going to go line.
I mean, it's all about Jack, it seems like, but Jack's safe. Like, Jack is safe. Jack could safe his way to steady top, somewhere between 7 and 10 in the world, like for the next 7 years if he stays healthy. Like he's safe. His game it's safe. It's complete, if you will.
I would say I like the word complete. I would even give a different word. I would say it is stable.
That's the word I'm looking for.
I wouldn't say, to me, it's a little weird. I'm going to tell you, Ben has the profile to beat anybody in the top 5 on a given day. Jack has the profile to beat almost everyone,
right.
100 to 10, about 8 times out of 10.
Right.
And that is where he's at now. And you heard it right here. Going further, if you told me the scores were 4 and 5, just a break each set, right? Unfortunate for him not to get a set, because that third set could have done something for Ben. If you gave me those conditions and you put Rune against Ben, I put Ben winning his first 1,000. If you give me what was it? What was the semi? Was that who did he play? Alcaraz. In those conditions, I could see Ben Shelton beating Alcaraz in those conditions. I could. Here's why I say it. Because of the serve, and because a little bit of the wind, and because that first strike. Just say, and also I still feel Alcaraz peaked. This is taking nothing away from Jack. I'm merely saying, had the matchup been, had he played anybody else that wasn't a lefty, that wasn't Jack Draper, I could see Ben getting farther in this particular tournament. And I also would submit to you, with the exception of Alcaraz, that was one of his closest scores. So
yeah,
it ain't like it was a walk in the park for Jack. Make no mistake.
I mean, that's good. I mean, this is kind of like the best thing about like the way that our tour kind of the tours unfold over the course of the years, right? Obviously, the Grand Slams are the big prizes, but we have these larger events where all the best players are there. We can do a little check in. Like I like the Sunshine Double as a nice place to check in to see where everyone is before they disappear to where most American fans are not paying attention to the European red clay. And then pop up on your TV in Paris in a couple of months. So, switching, let's go ahead and switch gears over to the women's side. And once our
talk about Mira.
Once our podcast gets all big and grown and stuff, this is where we would throw in a little advertiser break right here. Yep. And then move on to the next segment. But I'm gonna let you. This is still free game for you people out there. The women's side. I think my takeaway is this: the Mira Andreeva experience is happening before your eyes. Like, don't blink. It is happening. I'm not saying that she's going to rack up 10 Grand Slams. I don't think that happens on the women's side anymore. There tends to be about what I considered a 3-year peak for each one of these champions. To get there, it's 3 years of getting, somewhere between 3 to 5 Grand Slams, and then someone else pops up, right?
I would tell you that I'm glad that it's extended to 3 years, because back 5 to 8 years ago, it was a tournament. And
right. Yeah. I mean,
let's be honest.
Now we're getting to the point where like nobodies don't show up and win Grand Slams on the women's side. You're like, well, okay, maybe the U.S. Open occasionally, but
don't go there.
Okay. Sorry.
We already know about that one. We're not going back. We're not going back. Was that 2019? What was it?
2019, 2020, 2021. I mean, we had a couple of years of some. Anyways, Mira Andreeva. Okay, so Mira has had a fantastic run over the last few weeks, right? She's in Dubai, rips through that draw, takes down Iga, takes down Rybakina, right? Takes out Clara Towson in the finals, comes over here, does it again, takes down Iga, takes down Sabalenka.
That Iga match to me was the match. Beating Iga in that match to me, that match solidified to me.
That was the one.
That was the one. That was one to put over the top,
But like, let's talk about her as a player though, right? So like, regardless of the results, I saw something this tournament, and it maybe it happened in the Middle East. It was apparent in the Middle East as well. But I feel like you can go back to our our WTA outlook from January. Like, sure. I was like, the one hole that Mira has is her firepower. But she is young. She will fill into her frame. I think that will come. And then when that comes, everyone else is in trouble. And when I see her walking now, it's like, oh, Mira's been at the gym. and now her legs can withstand
the torture and the
torture, and she is serving big.
Yep.
She's serving big. She's not the biggest hitter, but when she gets the ball now on the forehand side that she can work with, she's going line. That's what she's doing to Iga. She's just ripping line before Iga does. Like, I'm gonna beat you there. And the last thing, and I'll let you go, is that the thing that I'm most impressed with, we've talked about this. Some of our guests who have played at the highest level talked about this. Like, the thing that separates the best at any level from the rest is that special skill. And I believe Mira has some of, if not the best continental skill on the women's tour right now. She defends with the continental better than anybody.
I would agree with that. I think her defending
to the point that it's a skill.
Good. Great feel. I would submit to you, Mahova has some of the best continental skills going forward. But
going forward. Sure.
Going side, going east-west, I think you're absolutely right. Mira's right there. Let me tell you what I saw about Mira from this tournament, which I don't often see, and I'm really liking that I'm seeing it. Mira is starting to get and I'm going to use Yannick Sinner as a good example, the two-way speed. She can counter you with pace, and then she can step up off of you being the pace hitter's off-pace ball.
Okay. Yep.
Let me explain that. And I love Arena. She's one of my favorite players of all time. After she to me is the Belarusian Serena. I've always loved Serena's game, so I'm naturally, loving the bigger hitters game. Obviously, it's something that it's just a profile that I like in the game. Sabalenka will hit a ball, Madison Keys as well. Mm-hmm. They hit a ball that is so big and so through you that it is, let's just use numbers. Let's just say it's a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. Okay? You're an Andreeva. You have the ability not to hit a 95-mile-an-hour ball, but you have the ability to handle 90.
Mm-hmm.
The one fallacy in the 90-mile or 95-mile-an-hour forehand player is they know intuitively that ball rarely comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get hurt, bumped, surprised that the ball came back. By nature, they're not very good at defending. They've rarely had to do it. So on a ball that they're neutralizing or rolling or bumping and just got caught, Mira has the ability to now hit a step up off of their gotcha ball. Her range is in between 75 and 89. Here's the problem. The 95-mile-an-hour hitters have to throw in a slice from time to time, have to throw in a roll from time to time to get back, because the ball is so big, they don't have much time for anything else. In that first game or so, Alvin, I saw Mira throw in against Arena a drop shot in the very first game in the final. And I'm like, ooh, that tells me comfortability. That didn't tell me that she's worried about anything. She's like, Arena, I got you. And you know what? You're not looking to come forward. I'm not going to out-hit you, but I'm not worried about your ball speed either. Now, I would here tell you, she won that match against Arena, played a pretty good second. I was really impressed. That Mira stayed the course. But you heard it right here, Alvin. She is not fazed by the bigger hitters.
Which is weird because coming into this match, she had a 1-4 record against Sabalenka, right? She got Sabalenka beat the brakes off her the last time they played, right? Earlier this year. So, it
was a bad match for her. She did not play like it was Australia. She did not play
Australia.
Like
and she's like, she has struggled with Arena before, but I think it's just the, Conchita, Conchita's doing the thing with her that is like really rounding out some of these like not often explored avenues of trying to break down a player. And Conchita's got the mind for it, and she has a player who also has the mind and the skill for it. So it's like we're just gonna solve this puzzle in a different way, and we're just not gonna let Arena get comfortable. And then like once the heat comes off the match a little bit, then you can play. And even to Mira's credit, like she did not play a very good first set, in that final, gets thumped, comes back out, and then just like right back to it, right back to work.
I felt like that was, I felt like, and I said it backwards. I felt like the first few games were high class tennis. I mean, there was some quality tennis in the first few games.
Yeah.
I felt like Arena got a break and kind of steamrolled, but I felt like early on, Mira was not phased. Sloppy had a game or two that she lost her way, but I'm telling you, she held on to win that third. I'm telling you, Alvin, I felt like it was Arena who was trying to find ways to win in that third set.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like Arena was trying to say, I keep going for this step up. She knows I'm going for the step up, and she's waiting for it. And what do? I don't not hit a step up, right? I don't not hit the inside hit. I don't not hit the big down line. But when I do, I almost felt Arena was almost rolling a wide sweep backhand to try to run Mira to the corner, taking pace off the ball a little bit, which is already compromising what she wants to do because she knows Mira's pretty good on the rise. So I almost felt even that match, I felt like that was kind of something that Arena was already throwing in a wrinkle, or her camp was already trying to throw in a way to get her to, she's going to counter me if I go big.
Right.
Let me roll her wide. It wasn't as good of an angle as it could have been, but it was a different ball that she normally hits. And I felt like that was a feather in the cap to Mira and her speed and her core coverage.
Yeah. Also, we got to a point in the match where you don't see Arena get to this point often where it's a hard fought 3-set match and we're in the back end, coming around the bend on the third set. I did see her at one point. It was so nice the way that they used that low camera angle off the back of the baseline there. She was going towards her right, kind of on, not really on defense, but she was moving from the ad court off the back angle over to her forehand. And I saw her, I just had this picture in my brain. I was like, right before she hits it, I'm like, she's a little too high to hit that ball. She's just too high. And I think it might have been like 3-2. Andrea was up a break in the third, something like that. Maybe 4-3. And I was like, yeah, she's just too high. I think she's tired. And she sailed that forehand long. And then I kept an eye on it. The next few points that she lost were all same. It's like, oh, she's tired. She's got her. She got into her legs. And it's like, most players can't hang with Arena long enough to get her there.
Right.
Even playing against Madison, like, is a different kind of match. Like, is 3 sets.
Muhammad Ali, he knew Foreman would punch himself out. You know what I mean? And so big hitters, that's the fallacy of the big hitter. There takes a lot of octane, to be a big hitter.
Yeah. Yeah. And
hats off to Mira is all I'm saying. I do have to ask you, what happens Madison and Sabalenka in the semi?
Oh, man. Okay. So I watched that match because that's what I do. I'm Team Madison over here. And that match was right after, there was a match on right before that one. That was really good. I think it might have been the Iga versus the match we were just talking about. Iga versus Andreeva, right? Yeah. Great match. So the stadium itself kind of felt a little like the air had been let out of it. Some people left. This match comes on. Both ladies, I mean, because that match was kind of like, it looked like it was going to end early and it didn't. So they both came out a little like, okay. Madison looked like, I've had a really good year so far. Won the warm-up to Australia, wins Australia, got kicked out of the Austin event on some weirdness because she
had too high.
I'm too good for this apparently. Yeah. Did well enough to get to the semifinals of Masters, and just like it was one of those slow start matches where she couldn't find the range, and then never found the range. She just couldn't. She made more unforced errors in the match than she won points. Right. Not more than winners, more than total points. It was like she was playing a level and a half below her normal level sharpness wise, and Arena was just on it. Like on it. When she did leave one in the court, Arena just tagging the other direction.
Still feeling the sting of that Australian tournament.
Yeah, and it's one of those matches where it's like it falls apart and you're like, okay, whatever. Like an 0-1 match, like it could have been 0-0. That was, I mean, Madison was serving down 0-6, 0-5 and held. It was like,
the pride game. Here's all I will say. The match before with Bencic was 1-1. Bencic, of course, took out Coco. Now, 1-1, Alvin. 1-1. Now, and she had a match the previous day against Bekic. Again, Bekic is a tour veteran, savvy. 3 in the third, 7-6. She won 7-6 and 3 in the third, lost 4-set, 6-4. You got to think at some point the tour is starting to take its toll on some of these players. While it's early in the year, we're 7, 8 tournaments, maybe 9 tournaments deep post Australia. You know what I mean? So in as many weeks, right? So we're starting to kind of get into the throes, so to speak, of the tour and all the hate to say it, the person that got hurt almost is better energized for the next
right.
event.
Yeah.
And if you're not dinged up, you want to win now, so at least you can bank the points.
Right.
I always say it to say, and I go back to Carlos, when I see these crazy 1-1, 0-0, 0-1 type matches, it's very difficult for me to think that player's not peaking a bit early, especially in these longer events. Because to me, and I see her win that kind of match, you're bound to be flat. You're bound to be a little off in a match after you've already played really well. And that's all I would say. And that's no excuse. It's what it is. It's just my playing level at a certain point. The thing I want to point out to that, Alvin, is this. When I win a 7-match tournament, there is no way that I played great all 7 matches.
Sure.
That's the thing that people have to understand. I don't play my game. I don't play great tennis all 7 matches. I use the term I told you guys when you guys were players, and I think it's just the way it is. You have a day 1, horrible tennis. Day 7, phenomenal. You can't play any better. You might be lucky to play the level again. But you're never as bad as your worst day, and you're never as good as your best day. You're always somewhere, right? One of the things, and I got that from an old coach and former Babylon exec back in the day. I thought it was one of the best things that he told me at Miami, ironically, at the tournament back in the day. And I've always used that because it made sense to me. You hope you don't have a day 2. And a day 2 is just a bad day. More errors than total points. And that's the day that Madison had. But you know when those days happen, Alvin? They happen after day 6s. They happen after a couple of days. You had a 4, you had a 5, you had a 6, you had a 5.5. Bam. Back to a day 2. It's like your body resets. You're back to the beginning of the week. It's like, hey,
you can't do this forever.
You can't do this for all. What are you doing? I just gave you 4 days in a row now. That's more than I should have given you. I gave you 5 in Australia. You're welcome. Don't sleep. It's back to day 2. That day's still in there. And you train to get that day out of your system or to raise the level that day so well that you never have to really do it. But that's what I mean when I say a player peaking early. That whole cycle tends to reset a little bit.
Yeah.
That's why you see these really lopsided scores from time to time from players that really are playing good ball. And that's something that I think our listeners and viewers should really understand, that I don't care how many times you played this person. You don't know what day you played them on. It could have been your 6 and their 3. It could have been your 3 and their 3. It could have been your 3 and their 6. You just don't know. And the bottom line of it is you have to play the player on that day, and not to mention conditions. That situation is very, very fluid. You don't know from one day to the next how you're playing. And trust me, that seed is very vulnerable on certain days. First match of the tournament, vulnerable. You know what I mean? After a couple of big wins, after a couple of big tournaments, after a couple of big matches, vulnerable. Not as vulnerable going in. If they're warming up, heating up, 4 set, tight 3, big, nice 2, steamroll 2, buddy. That player's on fire right now.
Yeah, and with these firepower, like big firepower, hard hitting women, like this happens sometimes. Like this is just one of those, like, you look at a standardized curve, and sometimes there's these tight matches that go 7-4, 7-5, 7-6 in the third. Sometimes there's these like, what the hell was that? And let's say Rybakina did the same thing to Sabalenka last year, right before the Australian Open, beat her in the final, I think Auckland, like 0-1, just beat the piss out of her. And it was the same kind of thing. It was like Sabalenka was just a little bit off. Rybakina was playing it's like Rybakina found her 9 and Sabalenka found her 4, and it's happened on the same day in the same 100%. Hour, and it gets bad.
Paula Badoza beat Coco that way in Australia. You have these matches where you're like, wow. And again, you can't get too worked up over it.
And Madison, even before the Bencic match, though, she played Mertens, and she was up a set in a break against Mertens and had her, and then it got nasty, and then they went 3, right? So you go 3 set against Mertens, who's she's tough out, and then 3 sets against Bencic, who's playing as well as anybody.
Right.
Sorry.
Might
have been somewhere there, yeah. But it's if she shows up a little, maybe she's just she should be a little tired. She just could be a little tired. You know what? Okay, so third turn.
Keys had a 4 with Mertens. She had a 4 and 3 with Mertens. She had a 3 and 3 with Bekic. Then she played Bencic. And beat Bencic 1-1.
That's right.
What I'm saying.
So that's weird then. That is weird.
And that's a peak. I'm trying to tell you, Alvin. That's a peak. That was Dimitrov losing to Carlito. Come on now. 1-1.
Right.
And so after that, I'm telling you, the day resets. It just does.
A couple weeks ago, I was playing with a buddy, and I remember the first time we ever played in a match in a league, he beat me. I was not moving very well that day. Whatever, he beat me. And we live close by, so we hit together every once in a while. I don't think he's beat me in a set ever since. But we get out there and we're playing on this court. This court for the listeners who are in Atlanta, it's a Lake Claire has this new court that's been resurfaced, and it's they put one court where 2 courts should be, so there's a lot of space around.
Yeah,
you feel like you're well, what I'm out stuff. Here. Yeah, you feel. Yeah. I felt it.
Yeah.
Was getting upset with how well I was playing on a day that it didn't matter. We played 2 sets. I beat him 1-1. He's like, let's play another one. I'm up 4-1, and we had to call it. And it's I was pissed because I'm never gonna play this well again. I'm playing so well. Because you're going to come falling out of that tree eventually, right? Maybe, hopefully you hit every branch on the way down, but you just can't stay in the zone forever. You can't stay in the zone for 2 weeks.
It's a beautiful place that day.
Yeah.
You train to get back to it, and you train to make your worst day better.
Right, exactly.
I never forget, we were at a Challenger one time, Sko and I, and there was a good player, Ryan Rowe. I never forget it. I'll never get.
He's an Austin guy. Yeah, we crossed paths in Austin back in the day.
Big tall kid, big lefty.
TCU. You go TCU, I think.
I think it was TCU. Big tall lefty, huge serve, big tall kid. When I tell you, Ryan was balling one night. Sko ended up doing pretty well in this future. I don't know if he won it or got to the final that week. Ryan Rowe was beating the piss out of Sko that night, and at one point, I remember telling Sko, he's playing well right now. Sko was like, man, I'm saying, this is like the night before. He's playing great. He's had a good week. I said, I don't know, Sko. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, he's playing a little too well. And I remember saying,
too well.
He's almost playing a little too well. Ryan's putting his stuff in his bag, shoving his stuff in his bag. We're like, hey, man, everything good? I'm pissed right now. We're like, dude, you're playing great. I know. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
I'm playing well tonight. I'm playing great.
It's Wednesday.
I got the walk. I play on Sunday. It was Friday night. I'm like, oh. And we all just hugged it out like, I got you, bro.
Yeah.
Here you, bro. And sure enough, he went out first, second round. I say it to say, had he been playing that tennis, a week later, he won turn. You know what I mean? So I've been going through this thing for a while, Alvin, this whole day theory stuff. There's no exact science to it because you don't know necessarily how you're going to play, how you feel it. There's so many factors to it. But what I will say is I think it has a lot of merit. It has merit from the sense that each player has their own range, right? You'd like to think I'm going to play my 1 through 7, right? You take out the 1s and 7s. I'm pretty much between the 2 through 6, and that means a median of 4. I'm at a 4 hopefully every day. Most people, and I would say most juniors, think that their median is a 5. They love to think of themselves as their 5 day.
They think of themselves as the best version of themselves.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they love to play a 6, but they really are, their 4 is really what they should be measuring, but they think of themselves as a 5, and they remember the 6. They never remember the 3 and the 2. Oh, that was just a bad match. I played terrible. I won't talk about it. Sure. I find most seasoned players know that they're a 3-4 combination. And they know how to play better on their 5 day, and the 6 days of bonus. They never plan on playing as a 6. You can't, because that's 1 day out of a week at best, 1 match. You hope that your 6 shows up on a day the other guy's playing a 6, and then you got your chances. The point I'm getting at is, and I would tell this for any club player, Alta Lady, men's player, T2 guy, junior tournament player, especially in the southern section. The national kids should have figured this out by now. If you're playing level 2s, level 1s, level 3s, getting into deep in the tournament, you should know this by now. You have to play 3 tennis on a 3-day. You cannot play day 6 tennis on a 3-day. You got to grind more, bigger margins. You got to make sure that you don't play when you don't have those skills that day. This is your coach's corner, Alvin. One of the problems we find is you're still trying to play like a 6. You're still going for down the tee serves when you haven't made a first serve all game. Hit the darn slice body. You can hit it flat, but go flat body. Don't even tempt yourself with these targets that you don't have that day. You will know in the warm-up how well you're playing. Listen to yourself. Your body's trying to tell you how clean you are or aren't on that day. Don't.
And also,
go ahead.
And also give yourself some time to get there. Like, don't you play your 6 tennis in the round before, you pop up the next day, and you're like from the warm up, like, all right, I'm that player I was yesterday. Let yourself get to that. You know what your high can be. Fine. Let's let ourselves get to that high.
I would tell you, I would follow up with that. Your day 3, it is rarely going to be a 4.
Yeah.
Your girl Madison was not going to get to a point where she was going to start all of a sudden balling that day against a few days ago against Arena. It was a bad day. She played so well before. Now here's my point. And you got to make sure you just let it go. It's just that day.
Yeah, you don't need to wrap it up. I feel like she saw it too. She didn't seem upset about it. She's like, you know what? Meh. Like, there's no other option when you're playing against Serena.
100%.
Like, she has to play. Madison has to play 4 or 5 tennis.
You got to be 4 or 5. You got to play 6 to beat her in straights.
And she doesn't have to
play 5 tennis.
She doesn't have the full package to do all the other stuff to like kind of like nip and tuck her way through it either. She's gonna have. There is one way that Madison Keys beats Arena Sabalenka, and it's that way.
It's that
and
way.
If that way is blocked, then we're not going.
That's right.
We're not going.
You're in traffic. You're in traffic in a Provost motor home. You ain't cutting through side streets.
We ain't cutting through side streets. And I think we're gonna leave the people with that one there, Coach. What's next on tap for us? I think we're finishing up Indian Wells. We've had some cool guests come on recently and spend some time with us. We got these episodes will be coming out soon. I think you guys are in for a real treat. And then we'll probably tap back in after Indian Wells and probably after Miami and do another run through. I'm going to Miami. I'll be down there.
Good for you.
I'll be down there for a day. I think maybe round of 16, something like that. Yeah, round of 16, I believe. A little 1-day trip. It's an annual tradition that my buddy and I and his wife we go. They live down there. So if you guys see me out there, say hello. Yeah, I'll be there, and then we'll talk about it.
I love it. It's a great tournament. I might have to come down and jet down there with you. That's
what I'm talking about.
The missus has a work trip down that area. May have to take a strong detour from.
That's a 3 on the road.
That's
all right.
3 on the road. You know what I mean? That may not be a bad little situation. Come down, check a few things out. Hopefully it'll work out. But it's a great tournament. I miss it. It's there for when I was on the tour with some players. I felt like I was there 3, 4, 5 years in a row, and then I've had a lot of Hudlows in between. My Miami Opens, I go back to the Lipton the days, and it was Lipton and NASDAQ. You know what I mean?
Yeah, over in Key Biscayne. It was Key Biscayne before, Briar. Yeah. Now they're in Miami Gardens. It's a very different vibe from what I've heard. I never went to Key Biscayne, but I've been to the Miami Gardens location at the Hard Rock Stadium a few times, and it's I like how the tournaments all have their feel. Dallas has Dallas. I talked about it with Dasef in one of our episodes. Dallas has a feel. It's very Dallas. The Atlanta Open is like it was very much so representative of Atlanta. Like you see a lot of brothers and sisters out there, which is not something you see at tennis events anywhere else in this world. And Miami it's got that Latin flair to it. I love it. It has character.
Yeah.
But anyways, so all right. So best of 3 on the road. We're going to sign off. I'm Alvin. That's Tori. Do the things you're supposed to do. Follow us, like us, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll catch you guys at the next one. Peace.